I believe it's 2 o'clock and we're now live with our Retail Consumer Behavior Evolution webinar. We'll just wait a few more minutes before we kick things off. And I can see people coming into the room, which is great. Okay, fantastic. Right, let's kick things off. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us today thanks for joining LifeSite and our partners today for our webinar. And today we're going to be discussing the evolution of retail consumer behavior post-COVID-19. We're going to be speaking to some of our peers and experts from across the ad tech, data and advertising space to share our thoughts and discuss the changing face of retail. What are some of the trends, challenges and opportunities that we're seeing with movement restrictions enforced and now being relaxed? What are some of the opportunities that programmatic advancements in technology and data solutions, data-led solutions are providing? And what do some of the recent changes in consumer behavior mean for businesses looking to re-engage with existing customers and acquire new ones? So we're lucky enough today to have some guests here representing differing international views, which I think will be additionally interesting. So a very warm welcome to our guests, our panelists today. Our guests today are Carly Chan, Director of Accounts at the Trade Desk in Singapore. Hi, Carly. Nick O'Grady, Head of Account Management and Technical Client Services at Quantcast, Australia.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone.
That job title would be a very strong Scrabble score. It's good.
Far too long.
Matthew DePallo, Solutions and Innovations Director at Kinesso, Australia.
Hey, everyone.
And myself, I'm Tom Gregory, the Country Manager at LifeSite for ANZ. A big thank you also to our behind the scenes team who are pushing the levers and have organized the Zoom webinar today. So thanks, Sally, Debjit, and our respective marketing teams. And a little bit of housekeeping. So we've allocated time at the end of the panel discussion for audience questions. So we encourage you during the session to post your questions in the chat widget, and we will have time at the end of the session for some of your questions. Great. So what an interesting last 3 months it's been. You know, COVID-19, a global pandemic, has tragically taken lives, shut down economies. You know, Australia is officially in recession and undoubtedly changed our world forever. In other ways, COVID-19 has been described as a catalyst, which is interesting, a catalyst for digital transformation of businesses operationally and also from a marketing point of view. Consumer behavior has changed. We all know this, you know, firsthand based on our own experiences. We're the same customers, we're the same consumers at heart, but our habits and some of our needs have changed. So what does the new normal look like? And you know, we've sort of sourced this, you know, from our partners and publicly available information. We're seeing digital transition across more demographics and different demographics than previously before, using online shopping capability, online payments, and consuming more content digitally. We are all at home. We're all at home right now. And therefore we're seeking products and services that enhance our more home-based lives and experiences. And we've got some more worries we're definitely more safety conscious, and we're mindful now of economic instability, and consumer confidence is at a low. Looking at the sort of national consumer, customer confidence survey data. Now, as a result of this, brand loyalty we have seen can be compromised, and I think when people are looking for safety, convenience, and also for stock and availability, brand loyalty is at threat, and consumers are more likely to switch. So that represents an opportunity for brands and advertisers to acquire new customers. So today we want to sort of get under that hood of consumer behavior and discuss what each of us are seeing in our respective businesses. The topic today is retail consumer behavior, which, if we look at the definition of retail, is the sale of goods and services to a certain extent. So I think retail is incredibly broad and covers the obvious categories of grocery, but we feel that a lot of today will apply to other goods and service-based businesses in other categories, whether it's petrol convenience, hospitality, and even auto, whether new vehicle sales or auto aftermarket retail. So, keen to sort of broaden the scope of our discussion today, and I think we just want to sort of encourage a lively discussion on what we're all seeing. So just a quick sort of headline. Forrester's predicted that as a result of COVID, we will see $2.1 trillion in retail revenue lost year on year in 2020. So that's roughly a 10% decrease. In Australia, we're estimating the GDP to decrease by between 10 and 20% for the year. H1 was already around a 10% reduction. And there's a lot of change been happening. Now, in Singapore, we've been where Carlisle is based. Circuit breaker was introduced on the 7th of April, which really shut down everything. Pretty much, from retail, working from home, retail, hospitality, and even recreational and sort of areas for outdoor sports. So, and I think only this week are coming out of level 2, are moving to level 2 restrictions. So that's had a huge slowdown of everything, I think, in Singapore and other SEA markets. Here in Australia, from the end of March, we saw discretionary retailers closing, and I think in mall and fashion retail were very heavily hit by this, and a lot voluntarily opted to close their offline stores from then, and we're only starting to see those reopen here in Australia this month. So huge upheaval, lots of change happening at the moment. Lifeside have just released some geospatial analysis, and I'm just going to show you a couple of points here showing some of the observations we've seen both here and in Singapore over the last 90 days or so. So we encourage you after the webinar to visit the /AU footfall link that you can see on screen here. There's an interactive dashboard that we encourage you to have a play with. Now, there's a couple. We've grouped different points of interest together and different retail categories into this. So whether it's grocery or convenience or alcohol or petrol, you'll find all the different categories grouped here. One interesting observation is we decided to group local supermarkets, local smaller format supermarkets together and compare those to the major larger format supermarkets. And what we saw in the months of April and May, when lockdown was at its strictest, is that the drop in footfall traffic at the local retailers was probably 10 index points higher or less than the major supermarkets, indicating that with those restrictions tightened, people were choosing to shop more locally at smaller, more convenient specialty and local format retailers. So I encourage you to go and have a look at and have a little dig around and see what other insights and nuggets you can find there. If you could just flick to the next image here, great. Now, over the last 3 months, we've also analysed what is the average distance travelled from home across Australia month on month. And what you can see is in March, where we were pre-COVID restrictions, approximately 50% were still regularly traveling more than 10 kilometers away from their place of residence. And obviously, we can see that dropped off by about 50% down to 27% for April, and we're gradually seeing that increase into May. But definitely evidence that the restrictions would have pushed people towards local options for retail. And looking at a different way of looking at the previous data is looking at a mobility index and looking at if we benchmark movement at 0 for the immediate period before lockdown, so from early to mid-March, and then look over time how that has traveled, we get an overview here of that. In Australia at its low point, footfall overall and sort of movement overall decreased by around 75%. In Singapore, is upwards of 85%. And you can see here when different stages of lockdown were announced, you can see the shift and impact that has had on mobility. So this information is also on our website, and there is also a tool on there to have a look at some other COVID-related analysis. So encourage you to have a look at that when you can. So guys, a lot of data there. And does anything stand out for you guys in the data we've just looked at there?
Yeah, Tom, I mean, the grocery point is really interesting because that's something we'll get to possibly later. It's something that we've seen reflected online as well. Exactly what you're describing, that move towards a niche, artisanal sort of goods. It's quite interesting.
Great. And in Singapore, Carly, the drop off, due to the restrictions, has it been as acute as maybe this graph shows in Singapore?
Yeah, I think that the trend is really there. I mean, just to share, as a new parent myself, I've actually had to go around hunting down medium-sized diapers that were totally out of stock. For some reason, medium-sized was just really popular. So that trend is definitely in line over here.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Definitely something we've observed, I think, in all the markets. Now, wondering, guys, we'll get into sort of a bit of a discussion about day to day. What have been some of the changes in your own consumer behaviors and habits that you guys have observed? I'll start with Mick, and maybe just run me through something you've experienced in your own life.
Yeah, well, I mean, despite appearances, I am still going to the barbershops. That hasn't actually changed. But probably the biggest change for me, I would say, my consumption has been, I think I'm now officially an audiobook guy. I was into gateway stuff like podcasts and long form series, but now just bit more time to commute in my day, or commute time back, long walks, long runs, audiobooks is the way to go.
Excellent. I can definitely relate. I've definitely, my consumption of education and child related and, education content and podcasts gone way up. Carly, how about yourself?
Very similar. I find, so I'm pretty OCD. I typically like to have, my phone screen very neat, but since the pandemic broke, I realized I've had to download multiple apps for e-com portals because, Amazon Prime isn't enough to sustain household groceries and medium-sized diapers apparently. So multiple apps on that, and also listening a lot on podcasts in terms of just audio content has just went up in this household.
Excellent. And Matt?
I think for me, something I didn't do as much the last couple of years is gaming, but now that I have so much more free time, I've got into it again. And having platforms like Steam, platforms like Nintendo Shop mean that you can browse games, trial games, all this kind of stuff without having to go to an actual store to do it anymore. So it's a really, really cool thing to have got back into.
Excellent. I think that these are all really representative trends that the market is seeing at scale, in across the board. Very interesting. So Nick, I might start with you with the next question. Sorry, excuse me. I'm just finding where I am. Matt, I'm going to start with you on this one. Matt, what are, in your day-to-day, what are advertisers asking for increasingly of their agencies and marketing intelligence solutions like Kinesso in light of the challenges presented by COVID-19?
Yeah, I think with a lot of advertisers choosing to stop or cut most of their advertising in the last 3 months has meant that there's been opportunity to go back and look at their approach to data. And I think they ask us a lot is about to really understand what data we're using it and how we're using it to talk to the right people for their brand, for their products, to make sure that messaging is right as well. And I think to have a lot more understanding and detail around how we're doing that.
And I'm curious, how are you achieving that?
We're lucky to have our own data stack, which is quite a big one. But a lot of the data in there, without really getting the nitty gritty of, who are in our clients' stores, for example, with the retail clients, if they have e-commerce, who are on their sites, and give them a real clear idea of how maybe those two audiences differ, what they look like, the interests of those people, the intents, Roy Morgan attitudes, to give them a lot more detail around these people than they'd normally have just from their CRM. It really helps them, one, validate what they think they know about their customers, but two, to get some really interesting insights out that go beyond just media, but business strategy, how they plan their business, which is real powerful and also very interesting to see what we can do with the data we have.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks, Matt. And same question to you, Nick. What are you sort of seeing on the client front?
I think when all this first started, I think the first thing that was asked really of us was probably a bit of patience and empathy as we sort of work out how to navigate the situation, I would say at first. But then it very much was a point of view and insights that we had. Matt sort of nailed it when he talked about less campaign activity, so less campaign insights. It means you had to have a bit of more of an overarching and describe the universe as you were seeing it, and just work on larger sort of vertical sized insights rather than individual campaign activation activity. And that's something that we've been on a journey with our advertisers on.
Great, thanks. And same question to you, Carly. What are you being asked by advertisers, and how are you guiding clients?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to echo what Matt and Nick have said here. So, at The Trade Desk has been approaching this current climate with a lot of awareness and empathy. So really supporting our agency partners in a multi-pronged approach, basically focusing on 3 key pillars: managing the now, planning for recovery, and preparing for the next normal. So really, by providing market insights and just keeping our agency partners updated on relevant audience insights, along with targeting solutions that they can leverage on to, really just navigate through these times of uncertainty that we're facing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's great. And look, I'll stay with you, Carly, on the next question. What are maybe some of the more innovative examples of data delivering better outcomes, smarter outcomes for clients that you've seen in the current climate?
Yeah, I think retailers have really come under tremendous pressure as a result of this whole pandemic, and especially with the movement restrictions in place, just maintaining usual footfall in stores. It's been a challenge for this period for the retailers, right? So really interesting case here is that one of the major retail mall operators in Singapore, they've recently launched an e-commerce platform and an online food ordering platform to host their tenant retailers. So I think what's a really interesting use case here is that they're able to leverage on past offline measurement campaign audience insights to then look at how we can drive these offline users to online onto the new e-commerce platform.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Carly. Same question to Matt about sort of innovative examples that you're seeing at Kinesso.
Yeah, obviously the data we sit on, predominantly the Axiom data, is born into addressable media. So the things you'd expect from a trading desk. But what we've really explored more so lately is how do we take that data to offline channels? And the main one we look at the moment is out of home. And the reason for that is, one is because when a client invests in the kind of data solutions we have, to bring it to not just a digital buying, but their whole media plan is so powerful. But also when we're able to talk to the same audience across your display, video, native, so on, but also out of home with programmatic trading of out of home, it means we can be more efficient with how we buy, but also do a better job of reaching everyone in this target audience. Which pulls back to the story we tell about reaching the right people, having the right message for them, and so on.
Yeah, fantastic. This is also obviously the season of lots of webinars, and I was on an interesting webinar earlier about, talking about connected TV. And I think that touches exactly on that similar point there about using data for smarter planning of reach and frequency. Do your solutions look into sort of addressable TV as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, addressable TV is another one as well, especially in COVID, where the consumption of that catch-up TV especially on the TV screen, has just exploded. It becomes one of the most important screens for an advertiser across their entire on and offline media plan. So yeah, not only are we looking at your display, your video, your native, your YouTube, but the out-of-home, the interconnected TV as well under one data set. It becomes very powerful.
Brilliant. Cool. Thank you. Nick, a question to you on grocery. So grocery retail obviously is the largest retail category in Australia and most markets. Now, what changes in online behavior have Quantcast observed among grocery buyers pre and post outbreak?
Yeah, so I'll answer in two parts. Quantcast derives our data source from a very large publisher graph. And that includes a lot of grocery retailers, both big supermarket online presences, as well as sort of more localized grocery. And what we've noticed, a huge uptick in traffic on both categories of grocery. But interestingly enough, and it's funny that you mentioned this has also happened offline as well, is that specialty groceries are now actually outpacing traffic to larger supermarket chains. So while people are ordering different types of products, more artisanal product lines, and moving away from possibly moving away from those larger brands. But in saying that, we've also noticed some demographic shifts in terms of people searching for online groceries. This was not a category that people over 55 ever indexed very highly for, but now it is something that that demographic is now searching more online for how to buy groceries online, which brings up an interesting point around accessibility of grocery retail online. How easy is it to transact as we're getting a less digital native sort of audience to those sites? But yeah, it was very interesting for me because I've never thought of myself as very trendy, but I have also been looking at cooking more at home and, cooking, being a bit fancy, doing homemade bread. So it's nice to know that that trend is built out in the general population as well. I'm not a unique snowflake.
Excellent. Couldn't agree more. I'd love to learn more about the bread, but that's another discussion.
I thought you were going to ask yourself around for dinner, Tom, but you're more than welcome.
Send me the recipe. I'm keen to hear, and maybe Carly, about the grocery category in SEA, in Singapore and SEA, and what sort of trends have you observed there in those markets?
Yeah, we would definitely have similar home baking sourdough trend in Singapore. I had my sister calling me like, "Hey, can you help me get yeast?" I'm like, all right. So apparently they were out of stock at a lot of places and online as well. So kind of touching on my point, I think, we all know that the retail landscape has really been shaken up by this pandemic, and the whole digital transformation has been accelerated as a result. One really clear standout is e-commerce here. Really interesting point to back this up is that, online retailer Lazada, which has a really huge footprint here in Singapore across SEA, they actually recorded more customers in April this year when the lockdown was first announced, and this has surpassed their record for 11/11 or Singles Day as we know it in November last year, which is typically their biggest campaign of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really interesting. I think e-commerce obviously ticks a lot of those boxes around convenience, safety, and assuming that also that they've got stock. And I think anecdotally, we're all hearing that pure play e-commerce businesses across most product groups have performed very well over the last 3 months. And we've also seen, I think it was one of the big omni-channel retailers, I think Super Retail Group, raising, $200 million plus to speed up that digital transformation and bolster out the e-com capability. So I think that's a great example, I think of CV19 really pushing that that transformation and increasing, definitely in Australia, increasing e-commerce penetration, which is still behind other markets, including Asia, SEA markets. Cool. So Matt, back to you, Matt. On the topic of measurement, we've spoken about measurement so much over the years. Why now more than ever would you say is measurement so important, but sometimes difficult for omni-channel retailers?
I think it's important first because it's the proof of what we do. It's one thing to go to a client and have this great data proposition and this great data set and promise the world, but if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, it's worthless. So measurement is so important because it proves that out. It proves the data is rich, scalable, and accurate, and it does what it's supposed to do. The issue we have with the retail client, of course, is that they sell their product only in a physical store. Sometimes it's not even their store. If you look at the P&Gs, the Unilevers, the Nestle's of the world, they're selling at a Coles and a Woolworths. It's not even their shop. So, it's not like that dream client who are e-com where you can just drop a tag on a checkout button and you can have a real hard and fast action to track against. So measurement is hard, but we're always looking for proxies, be it footfall in a store, for example. Can we work with the client CRM? Things like this that allow us to get as close as we can to a real hard and fast and meaningful conversion action, because things like CTRs, CPCs, completion rates don't mean anything to anyone. It's important that we are holding ourselves to a metric that actually matters.
100%. Great. Couldn't agree more. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, I was nodding along as Matt was talking, especially around vanity metrics and measuring what matters. It's important because it's a feedback loop. As Matt said, how do you know that you're winning if you can't measure what your activity is. So it's difficult at the moment. It's challenging. Data sits in different stores. This isn't just a retail issue, but for me, this is why you invest in people and resource and that skill set. Data analytics is so important to have in the business. You want your people on your commercial side to think like behavioral scientists, but you want people in the background who can analyze data in all its different forms and work out if activity is driving the outcomes that you desire. So yeah, 100% what Matt said.
Thanks, Nick. And Carly, what are your thoughts on measurement and why it's so important and sometimes challenging?
I think, especially now because of the shift in consumer behavior, they've really changed sales funnels, hence, requiring the shift in marketing practices as well. So I think it's especially crucial for brands to be nimble and responsive, even more so during these times of uncertainty. And really, kind of touching on what Nick has mentioned here, programmatic, can really help brands stay nimble, because we can adjust as the market and other circumstances fluctuate. So, by activating tools like footfall measurement tools, we can really close the loop to map out the entire life cycle of a consumer, which is really important now in a post-COVID world to, know who your audience is and where, they are. And really by, leveraging these real-time insights, then, you take the action to kind of pair this with custom solutions to drive like insight optimizations to really help the brand, capture and drive better engagement with their audience.
Thanks, Carla. I think that's a really great point raised about the nimbleness and being able to adapt quickly, and obviously huge benefit of programmatic and direct, measurement integrations to be able to optimize on the go. Incredibly valuable at the moment. I think also, potentially a selling point and as something that Matt might be sort of looking at for the digital out of home play as well, to be able to be more adaptive, which I think, any programmatic capability will offer. Cool. Last question then. And this is sort of a forward looking, a bit of a, prediction. Love to get your predictions really. How do you all think consumer behavior will evolve as restrictions are relaxed further? And what opportunities does this represent for retailers and other businesses? I'll start with you, Matt, on this one.
I think in a world where we're all living in our bedrooms, a lot of behaviors we've had to learn. Some which we won't stick, but some will stick. And that stuff, for example, like exercise. Like a lot of people now exercising online, doing online classes, Zoom classes, Instagram classes as well. That's kind of probably not going to disappear. I think people like the convenience of being able to do a gym quality workout in their house. And these kind of opportunities are going to open up for other businesses. We've also things like working from home. We've obviously taken that from 0 to 100, and we know that we don't need to be in offices to keep the wheels turning. So what does that mean for people who own property blocks? What does it mean for the cafes that live off those office blocks? So there's a lot of things are going to change, but there's a lot of opportunity for people who can be innovative to keep up with it.
Fantastic. Carly, what would your future forward prediction be? What do you think? How do you think this will evolve further?
Yeah, I think, even though, movement restrictions are slowly being lifted across the region, people will still and, should continue to be cautious in terms of, being in crowded areas. So I think, consumers will still be opting for like a safer, non-physical shopping experience where possible. And, definitely that's gonna have like the e-commerce rising trend continuing. Yeah, and like a local survey here in Singapore has showed that, Singaporeans who have shopped online for the first time during the COVID outbreak, they're very likely to continue to do so in the next 12 months.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Carly. And Nick?
Yeah, I mean, habits have been formed, and over 3 months, and people are I feel, are going to have a little bit of a consideration about what they actually want to put back in their life. And a long commute to work every day might not be something that they put back in. And I think, as Matt was saying, the concept has been proved. We've been living in a massive social experiment by not by design, by circumstances, and that's allowed us to go, okay, well, the wheels didn't fall off, companies can survive, and people can work from home. And while people might not be doing that every single day now, the working flexibly will be part of the day-to-day conversations of businesses. And that means that, people might be falling in love with shopping locally and looking for things in their own community, which I think is important, as well as online exercise and the rest of it as well. I think, I know I've been exercising more, and I see quite a lot of runners nowadays. So, opportunity there for your sports brands. But, other opportunities to look at and considerations. And when we've looked at the data I mentioned earlier with online groceries, you have an older demographic who is starting to get more comfortable with the idea of shopping online. And I think all the design and art form that goes into your in-store experience can be put into your web presence as well, making sure the accessibility works in both virtually and in reality. And the other core demographics we've seen on online retailers is something sort of lower income brackets are actually moving away from or are less indexed against. So that's something also to consider, around pricing, around delivery and that sort of thing, convenience. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. It's great that, companies like these great ones that are on the panel here can share insights and stuff with advertisers so they can react in real time.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. And there's been a few questions through. We're going to get to the Q&A shortly. And it's quite interesting that there is a comment here from you, Ryder, also talking about, what is driving people, what other factors are maybe driving people to local commerce or to local retail. And it could also be, the experience and customer service. And so other things that businesses will need to take into account. So before we move to the Q&A with your awesome questions, just to summarize some of those points. Thanks, guys. Really, really interesting to hear all of your points of view. We think there's huge opportunities for online transformation. I think this is going to speed up and improve our e-com options with omnichannel retailers. There are opportunities for local and specialty offline retail, and I think there will always be a big place for that. I know hospitality, everyone I've spoken to with restrictions being relaxed, that's everyone's first port of call. We're absolutely still seeking convenient, safe and easy transactions. And I think data has been the resounding, thread here. No surprise looking at where we all come from, but data to plan, execute and measure media maybe more effectively, more efficiently, is something that's going to help advertisers and brands. And yeah, I think, people commented there about getting more customer intelligence. I think this is the time to get to know your customers better using data, not just for marketing, not just for media activation, but for business critical decisioning. So thanks so much, guys. Let's go to our questions. We've got another 5+ minutes, so we'll fit in as many as possible. Okay. Okay, interesting. It's a very interesting one from Isabel. Do you think that with the impending decline of brick and mortar retail, and definitely some of the challenges, that this is going to have an impact long-term on commercial property market, real estate, office leases, etc.? I think that's a very interesting one. Anyone with a thought on that?
Anyone got a real estate person?
Has anyone here wound back on their office commitments I'm just curious.
We haven't, but I know of a lot of businesses that have, especially the WeWork type ones. You're the ones who only need 4 desks anyway.
Yeah.
And it makes sense for businesses like that are such small people. A lot of them are just like teams of salespeople anyway, so they don't really need to be in the office together anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not an economist, especially not a property economist. I won't have a punt at what it would be long-term value. As I think that it'll come down to doing something else with that space. They might stop being, retail spaces, but there's always another use for them.
Yes.
And I guess that's the challenge, is to figure out what do you do with that space, because a decent sized shop in the middle of a CBD is going to be valuable no matter what you put in it. You just got to put the right thing in there.
Absolutely. So I know an area that LifeSite is involved in is around helping shopping centers with retail tenant modeling. And I think that's going to change. The consumer profiles around malls are going to change. And therefore, I think that the malls and big commercial property owners will adapt and put things into those locations that will still attract an audience. Cool. Next question, conscious of time. Look, we've heard about digital transformation and brands increasing e-com online sales capability. Do we think that this is going to speed up e-commerce penetration across lots of other verticals, including grocery, for example?
Yeah, happy to jump on that. I think definitely, the retail business is not just the only category here that we've seen the impact. In fact, for any brands across all of the categories, they've all had similar impact, just differing levels there. I mean, if we look at Singapore, for example, the F&B business have suffered quite a huge impact here, and with the community now, everyone's being a lot more conscious to support the local businesses. And I think one thing that they've really been prompt as well is to move their business online too. So we're actually seeing a lot more of these local restaurants doing online ordering methods, and offering like food delivery to people.
Fantastic, thanks, Carly. Time for one more. Now, and there was a comment earlier about the projection for retail in Australia, looking at the retail fashion retail data, looking quite scary. And I think just a reminder that that's footfall index. And I think, those locations are largely only just now reopening. So I think that's why fashion based on footfall was looking very bleak. But then obviously I think fashion would have seen a significant uplift in the e-com side of things. Cool. Look, a question about digital out of home. If digital out of home promises more accurate targeting, are you expecting increased investment in digital out of home across your businesses and platforms? That might be
probably more relevant for Matt, I would say.
In a nutshell, yeah. I think that I want to be careful with this one. I think the lockdown has shown that the flexibility of programmatic-led buying makes sense, not just in digital formats. Like all the benefits of programmatic brought to display and it brought to video, 5 years ago, we went on that journey, became very apparent when advertisers wanted to stop their bookings in February. So that I think it will. Out of home's an interesting one because not everything can be programmatic. There's so many static screens out there. But I think what can be traded programmatically will see a very sharp jump in programmatic trading in the next 12 months.
Fantastic. Guys, that is all the time we've got for today. So a huge thank you and apologies. There are another handful of questions. I think we might follow up with a bit of a blog piece and put these questions out to our panelists and and bring that together in a written piece. So thank yous. Thanks everyone. Thanks all of our panelists. Thank you so much for making the time to be here and, with all the preparation. We really appreciate that. Thanks to all of you that have attended and logged in today. You'll be shared a link for the recording afterwards. And if people missed it, it will be available. And thanks very much to the team at our end, behind the scenes for organizing and keeping us on schedule. Guys, thank you so much for everyone's time. And we hope to see you very soon.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, guys. Bye.